Brian Kelly calls his shot. So how can he make it a reality? We're talking about it. Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Brian Kelly said point blank, we'll see you in the national championship. So what I want to do today is let you hear uninterrupted what Brian Kelly said. Because we live in a media culture where things get clipped and taken out of context and posted. You will hear, so there is no uncertainty whatsoever with what Brian Kelly said. You will hear his full answer to the follow-up and also why he feels so confident about his program moving forward. And you know I want to react to all of it. And with a big recruiting weekend, this past weekend with signing day coming up on Wednesday, the early signing period, I'll give you the latest of what I know on DJ Pickett, Jakeem Stewart, and the like. So we're going to delve into all that here today. So thank you for being with us. Let's start with what Brian Kelly said post-game. Now, I am not going to play a 3-second clip, a 5-second clip. I'm not going to give you an abbreviated, non-contextual part of what Brian Kelly said. Make no mistake whatsoever. Brian Kelly opened his press conference, talked about how proud he was of his team. When everyone around him, all the noise was that they could have quit. There was nothing to play for, which was true. They went out and played 2 tough opponents and won both games, which was true. And this is what Brian Kelly said, completely uninterrupted.
This team over 3 years is 19-2 at home. So, whatever camp you want to jump into, go right ahead. We had 5 freshmen and 2 sophomores on defense today, playing their tails off. So, again, we're taking receipts, and we'll see you at the national championship. This team's building. We're excited about them, and we're really proud of them. So, with that, we'll open up to questions.
We're taking receipts, and we'll see you at the national championship. That is nothing in any way misinterpreted. And that was his opening. That was the end of his opening statement. That was not an answer to a question. It wasn't leading anywhere. That was unprovoked Brian Kelly saying it. Now, a bit later in the press conference, he was asked a follow-up. This is Glenn Guilbeau with the question, which you'll hear, and asked specifically about when they're going to win the national championship. Asked for clarification. And Brian, I'm going to warn you, this is a 2-minute answer. I told you, I'm giving you uninterrupted content. I am not going to do something where I pick and choose and pluck and manipulate words so people are unclear about, make it fit a narrative. I'm letting you hear everything that was said so you can make your decision, and I'll react to it as well. Here was the follow-up.
You said see you at the national championship. You talking about like next year or near future or what?
What do you think? What do you think? Look, listen. Here's my point. The standard is the standard here, right? The standard. I didn't come down here to go 8-4. I'm not happy about 8-4. Okay, nobody in that room's happy about being 8-4. What they're happy about is they've played well after a 3-game losing streak, and they bounce back. And this game teaches you lessons about grit and toughness and perseverance and not giving up. And letting go of the rope, right? They easily could have fractured, right? Instead, they stuck together and they stayed committed, and they beat 2 teams that were really good football teams in this league and have pelts to show that they are good teams, right? We're not making that narrative up. So at the end of the day, we want to win every game we play. And the standard at LSU, at Alabama, they're not happy with 3 losses at Alabama. Georgia's not happy with 2 losses. Nobody's happy when they lose a game. But what I'm happy about in the short term is the way our guys responded to adversity. That's why I came in here and said I'm proud of our football team and the way they responded to adversity. The big picture is I'm excited about our future, regardless of what people seem to think. And that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, but nobody knows what it looks like from the inside. I've got the best perspective of that. And you can write away and have your own opinions, and that's fine. That's why you guys have a pulpit to do that. I have a better perspective of it. I don't listen to what you have to say, and we're going to build it the way we know that we're going to build it, and I'll see you in the national championship game.
I will say, so again, there you have it. There is no uncertainty. Now, he didn't answer the question that Glenn asked, which is, when are you talking about? So Brian Kelly it was smart enough not to box himself into a corner, so as to say next year. But this very much has a vibe of Ed Ogeron after the loss to Alabama in 2017 saying, we coming. And that became a familiar sort of rallying cry, that we coming. And as they improved in 18, and then we saw what happened in 2019, that got told over and over and over again. This is decidedly more adamant. This isn't we come, and this is I'll see you in the national championship. Now, it is fair to mention that's not really an uncommon or unfamiliar place for Brian Kelly. I'll remind you that he did get Notre Dame to the BCS National Championship game in 2012, where they lost to Alabama. And he did twice get Notre Dame to the 4-team college football playoff, where they lost twice in the 4-team college football playoff. I'll also tell you today the same thing I told you the day Brian Kelly was hired, is the reason he took this job, the reason he left the comfort and security of Notre Dame, where he's the winningest coach in the history of one of the greatest programs in the history of college football, and where he had comfort and security and stability and all that stuff. The reason he left is he saw the glass ceiling in South Bend. He knew that there was only so high you could climb with the roster you were able to build in South Bend, Indiana. And I think Marcus Freeman's about to find that out this year as well. And by the way, Brian Kelly left Marcus Freeman with pretty full cupboard. But this is a guy who's been there. So it's not like Kirk Signetti walking into Indiana day one saying, Google me. That's bold and brash. That's a guy who had been at one, but had won a James Madison, is now walking into Indiana, which hasn't won anything in its entire history, and walking in day one and saying, Google me. That's bold and brash. This is a little more realistic, and it's also why Brian Kelly came here. Brian Kelly didn't leave Notre Dame to come to Baton Rouge to go 8-4 or to go 9-3 and win a bowl game and get to 10 wins. There's one thing in his career that Brian Kelly has yet to do, and that's win a national championship. And if you look in the history of college football, the winningest coaches in the history of college football, the list is it's long to distinguish, but it's Paterno, Bowden, Bear Bryant, Pop Warner, Amos Alonzo Stagg, Nick Saban, Mac Brown. Like, you're not gonna get too far now if you take away the vacated wins by Brian Kelly. But you're talking about a guy who's in the top 10 in college football history in all-time wins, with some of the wins that were vacated from Notre Dame. But he's at 289 career wins in 34 years. So after the vacation of wins, he's at 16. Without the vacation of wins, he'd be in the top 10 all time. So again, he's done everything. He's done everything except win a national championship. So it's not surprising that he would say it. Quite honestly, I love that he said it. And I hope that his team rallies around it, and LSU fans hold him to that. Because if someone were standing at a podium trying to convince me that they were excited about 8-4 because of the progress they're making and what they're building, like, that's not going to be okay. The fact that he said, we're not happy with 8-4, but I understand what we're building. That's why I wanted to play the full context of the conversation. I can get down with that. But now there has to be some realism to say, okay, you're calling your shot. You're happy with the direction you're building and the grit your team showed in these last two games, which, look, they could have laid down. I'll agree with him. It would have been very easy to roll over. especially in a portal, NIL era, all that stuff. It would have been very easy once all the goals were off the table to lay down. They didn't. They went out and they played hard, and they won 2 games resoundingly. Good for you. Now, how do you build from here? That's the big question, and that's what Brian Kelly also addressed in his press conference that I want to talk about as we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so Brian Kelly called his shot. Now the question becomes, okay, well, how do you get there? How do you get over that hump from 9-3, 9-3, 8-4 to thinking you're actually going to see a kaboom in year 4 and propel this program through to a college football playoff, to a national championship? Well, Wilson Alexander in that same postgame press conference asked Brian Kelly why he had reasons for optimism. And I'll warn you, the beginning of this, Kelly got a little testy, but he did give some good context here, which I want to talk about.
What else would you like me to give you? I mean, there's 7 players with 1 year experience on defense that just beat the pants off of Oklahoma. That's pretty good. And they beat a really good Vanderbilt team the week before. So, they're 5-3. We played a lot of young players this year. And so, when you take the body of work, we had 3 games that we had the lead late in the third quarter or we'd be talking about are we going to host, So, look, I could go on and on about, here's where we're going to be in January. In January, well, I'll back up. Yesterday at the hotel, 21 true freshmen made the travel roster. 21 true freshmen. We're going to introduce 16 mid-year freshmen into this roster. We're going to have 37 freshmen in winter conditioning for the first time. That's what our roster looks like. That's exciting. So when you're talking about the foundation for your program, that coupled with having key players come back, they haven't announced yet, but we're going to have some key players decide to come back. That's what's pretty exciting. And when we are finished with this roster will compete at the highest level.
Okay. A few things there that are very notable. He started by talking about the youth. 7 defensive players in the game against Oklahoma that all have 1 year of experience. And you could, meaning in their first year, they're freshmen or redshirt freshmen that are just playing. And you could run down the list of guys that made an impact there. Gabe Relaford, JVR Suggs, who transferred in, Dylan Carpenter, PJ Woodland. I'm going right down the list here. Dom McKinley on the participation chart. Devon Keys, Ahmad Bro. 7 guys right there on the defensive. That's the defensive side only that played significant snaps and a big role for you in that game. So, yes, he is right. Brian Kelly has said since he got to LSU, he wanted to build the roster through the portal. Build the roster through high school recruiting and supplement through the portal. That's an approach that's going to take time. I've been very consistent here because as I see it, there's 2 pretty contrasting styles or ways to build a roster. It's what Brian Kelly's doing, build through the high school recruiting, supplement through the portal, or what Lane Kiffin has done, which is go ham in the portal and try to build your roster that way and go for broke. Well, Brian Kelly's team of young guys beat Ole Miss this year, and neither one's going to the playoff. So we could still argue maybe neither way is the right way. I'm not telling you one way or another, but as we continue to see the sample size grow in this portal NIL era, we'll start to see some things clarify. But it's fair to look at what Brian Kelly's doing and saying, okay, you signed an elite level class in 2024, and look at all these young guys that played and contributed, and they'll all be back next year. Now, the flip side of that is he started to say in January, they'll have 21 true freshmen and 16 mid-years. So 16 incoming freshmen that'll be early enrollees, right? So the 21, so you'll have the freshmen from the class of 2024 who will be finishing their freshman season at LSU, going into winter conditioning, and then the 16 mid-year enrollees that are coming in. He says that's exciting. I look at that and I go, man, if you keep relying on young people, you're always going to be young. At some point, you have to get veteran. But to the point he's making, as Kelly has said consistently, that he wants to build through the high school ranks. And so then I can look forward and go, okay, well, as I look at the 2025 roster, I look at guys who are young guys that played a pretty pivotal role this year. Whit Weeks will be back as a junior. Gabe Relaford will be back as a sophomore. We mentioned JVR Suggs, who could certainly come back. Ashton Stamps will be a junior, now a 3-year starter. PJ Woodland will be back for his sophomore year. He played a lot of games for you this year as a true freshman. Dominic McKinley will be back as a sophomore. Devon Keys, who started the last 2 games and played all but 1 defensive snap against Oklahoma, will be back as a sophomore. Ahmad Bro, who bulked up, gave you really size and presence on the interior, will give you reps will be back as a sophomore. A lot of reason to be optimistic about those guys. And then on top of it, you're going to get some guys back, like you're getting Jacobian Guillory back off of injury. He's already declared he's returning. West Weeks is coming back, so that's another senior linebacker that'll be there for you. We'll see what a guy like Jordan Gilbert elects to do, who has more eligibility. Does he return for another year? I don't know the answer to that yet, but you can look at Deshaun Womack, who was a former 5-star, who you hope continues to develop, and then all the young players that they're bringing in. The last part of what Brian Kelly said there is the key players returning. He said, we're going to have key players returning that just haven't announced yet. Well, we all know the list that we're all keeping an eye on. First and foremost, it's Garrett Nussmeier. You've got to get Nuss back. He is priority number 1. I've shared with you for some time now that the scuttle is his dad, Doug Nussmeier, of course, is a lifelong college and NFL coach, wants Garrett to return for another season. Okay, if there was a big board I saw last week from one of the draft analysts that had Nuss as a day 3 pick. If he's a day 3 pick, then he needs to come back. That would be amazing. I've also told you that Harold Perkins is a guy that is strongly considering a return. We let you hear from Brian Kelly last week about that. Emory Jones, the NFL, I've been told, wants to see Jones at guard, and there's a good chance that Jones could return for a senior year, kick inside, and play guard. When we've been talking all year about losing 4 starters on the offensive line, what a huge boost it would be if you got Emory Jones back. Mason Taylor's another one that I have been told is considering returning to LSU as well for a senior season. It's also worth mentioning, after the game, Brian Kelly said in no uncertain terms, Aaron Anderson is planning to return. He has already said CJ Daniels is planning to return for 2025. So now all of a sudden, it's not just about talking about these freshmen that played an increasingly important role in the 2024 season, coming back and having another year of growth as they move into their sophomore season. It's about having all of these veteran players return, and now you have young talent getting older and becoming the veterans on your team. And then this potentially uber talented 2025 freshman class and supplementing with the portal. That's a great plan. Like, I think we can all objectively agree that's a great plan, right? Like, If you get Nussmeier and Perkins and Emory Jones and Mason Taylor back and Aaron Anderson and C.J. Daniels and DJ Chester's a year older, and you look around and you got Xavion Thomas back as well, and if Chris Hilton comes back for another year and Caden Durham will be a sophomore, and you can look around and go, Jacoby and Guillory's coming back, and West Weeks and Whit Weeks on the interior, and Devon Keys another year, and Gabe Relaford played a ton, and Don McKinley and Ashton Stamps will be a 3-year starter, and P.J. Woodland played a ton for you. I mean, you can look around and go, Deshaun Spears at safety and go, man, that's a hell of a base, a starting point before we even talk about the 2025 class and the portal guys you're going to go get. But you got to get all those guys. And that's the key. How many of those guys actually are going to make it to the field in 2025 for LSU? How much of this 2025 class can you keep together? What players in the portal for 2025 can you actually reel in and get to campus? It's nice to have a bag full of cash and say you want to go buy all these players and supplement your roster. And that's great. And LSU has the bag of cash and they know their needs and they're ready to go spend. But they were ready to go spend last year. And they missed on Dominic Williams and they missed on Simeon Barrow. And they needed interior defensive line help and they weren't able to get it. So the plan is great. You got to execute the plan as well. Brian Kelly also followed up with a thought on some of this youth that's very important. We'll talk about that coming up, and I'll give you a little bit of what I know, the latest after a weekend of visits with DJ Pickett on campus for 3 days, and a surprise as well with Jakeem Stewart not making his trip to Ohio State. We'll continue locked on LSU, your team every day. Bowl season is just about upon us. If you're going to follow the Tigers or any bowl game, of course, you can get your tickets over at Game Time. The big game is coming to New Orleans in February. You want to be in that number. Game Time can help make it happen. Game Time is just the best. And remember, with the Game Time guarantee, you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. They also offer things like job loss assurance. If you lose your job and need a refund, Game Time has you covered. They have event cancellation protection. It's automatic full refunds for events that are canceled and not rescheduled. They even have a 24-hour returns guarantee. You can return your tickets within 24 hours from the time of purchase for a full credit to your Game Time account. No questions asked. Why in the world would you shop for tickets anywhere else? You wouldn't. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, so Brian Kelly also, in addition to talking about the young players from this defense, the 16 mid-years coming in, the veteran players returning, he elaborated a bit more on the youth after the game against Oklahoma on Saturday.
Devon's a freshman. There are things that, look, he makes some plays, but he's a sound football player. He's assignment correct, and we trust him. And you've got a freshman out there. Don McKinley was not blockable tonight. Another freshman, Amon Bro, was outstanding. P.J. Woodland was outstanding. Gabe Relaford played. There's 4 freshmen right there, making impact. So, when we think that, we're ready to sink, you got 5 freshmen that are playing in the SEC, and, they're 5-3 in the SEC. Look, I know what the standards are here, right? Everybody wants to win every game. We wanted to win every game. We're not happy if we lose a game, but we're happy about the foundation of this program, playing with young players that are only going to get better, and we're going to supplement those players. And it was good to see them compete at a high level.
We're going to supplement those players. Now, he's talking about 2 ways, the transfer portal and, of course, the 2025 class. Something to keep an eye on is now that many teams' regular seasons are over, you're going to start to see players enter the portal, or at least declare that they'll enter the portal. Ricky Collins, the LSU redshirt freshman quarterback, declared for the portal on Sunday. It was reported that he plans to enter the portal. 11 episode on that, and the future of the quarterback position coming up as well. But you're going to start to hear some of those leaks come out. The 25 class as it stands is ranked 6th in the country. Coming up Wednesday is the early signing period. So we will have answers to all these questions. Will DJ Pickett stay committed? What about Derek Meadows, who still remains committed to LSU? Can they get this class across the finish line? What about Jakeem Stewart? As it stands, LSU has 25 commitments. They're ranked 6th nationally. Of course, this is since the Bryce Underwood defection. And the top commit is DJ Pickett, the number one cornerback in the country, 6'4" out of Florida. Miami and Oregon have made a hard push for DJ Pickett here of late. The latest information that I have from DJ Pickett's visit this weekend in Baton Rouge, and remember, Pickett was here in Baton Rouge Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Got into Baton Rouge on Friday, left on Sunday. Remember, Sunday at midnight is when the dead period began. So coaches can no longer have face-to-face contact with recruits through the early signing period. They can still text or call, but there's no more face-to-face contact. There's no more in-person meetings. Like, the hay is in the barn. And what I was told is after DJ Pickett's visit, he is saying and acting like he is 100% LSU. That is fantastic news. I think sometimes actions speak louder than words. And the fact that DJ Pickett was on LSU's campus the final weekend before the dead period in the early signing period is a great sign. That's action speaking louder than words. For example, Jakeem Stewart. Jakeem Stewart was supposed to visit Ohio State for the Ohio State-Michigan game this weekend. He did not make that trip. Regardless of what he may say his top 4 are, not making the trip to Ohio State is a better indicator that he's not considering Ohio State than anything he could have said. So DJ Pickett is still saying, acting like he's 100% LSU. I completely 100% trust my information here. And as for Jakeem Stewart, playing it closer to the vest, but a lot of people around LSU think that he is still going to end up at LSU unless the Bryce Underwood type situation happens where Southern Cal or Oregon or somebody drops a big bag on him. And I'll tell you, man, maybe I'm just jaded because of what we saw with Bryce Underwood, but I don't know how, if you're an LSU fan, supporter, follower, media, whatever, you can look at this with anything other than skepticism. I mean, Bryce Underwood was as solidly committed as anybody could possibly be. I mean, to the point where he had been committed for a year, didn't take another visit. LSU had done such a good job that he did not take another visit. He was on LSU's campus in November for the Alabama game. He was here with his girlfriend. They had the NIL deal done. They were dotting I's, crossing T's. And one of the richest men in the world came and dropped $12 million in his lap, and it was over. The 3 years worth of work. So what if Phil Knight decides we want Jakeem Stewart? What if a bunch of rich USC boosters decide we're not losing that kid? Then you have to ask yourself this question if you're LSU. Do you play that game? Do you allocate the resources to get that one guy? Because I'll tell you where I'm coming from. Two things can be true at the same time. You can desperately want Jakeem Stewart. And I want him to be an LSU Tiger, and I think everyone associated that with that program wants Jakeem Stewart to be an LSU Tiger. That is true. Full stop. Also true is that when you have a finite amount of resources to invest in the roster, you have to be mindful of how much you're willing to invest in one position or one player. So do you really want to overspend for one player, or take that money and go into the portal and find 3 impact guys? Like, in this instance, the sum of the parts might be greater than the whole. So in an ideal situation, LSU's done an amazing job recruiting Jakeem Stewart, and I think he wants to stay home and be a Tiger and play for Bo Davis. I believe that. And I know LSU, I'll disclose to you the offer that I was told 2 weeks ago was a shade under $1 million a year. I mean, just under $1 million a year. It might have gone, I do not know, it might have gone up since then. And this was pre-Bryce Underwood's decommitment, by the way. So it might have gone up. He might be over $1 million now. I don't know. That's an incredible commitment. And it shows you how badly they want him. But are you really willing to go much higher for one player? Or do you go find 2 or 3 impact guys for that same amount? I think that's the decision that Jakeem Stewart is going to make for you based on what he wants to do. You put your best offer on the table, and if it's enough, awesome. Then Jakeem Stewart's a Tiger, and we're all doing backflips. And if it's not, then it's not. And the optics will be terrible, but you will have a bag of cash to go spend in the portal, which LSU needs to do anyway. So to bring it full circle where we started, with Brian Kelly predicting, saying we'll see you in the national championship, I do believe he will get there. And I believe he has the path to get there. And I believe he has the resources to get there. And I believe he's a good enough coach to get there because he brought Notre Dame there. He can certainly bring LSU there. But how quickly LSU gets there will largely be determined what happens this Wednesday with the early signing period and over the next month when the transfer portal window opens and some of these players start to make declarations about where they'll land. By the time the new year comes, we will have a really good sense of if Brian Kelly's proclamation will be realistic in 2025. And you know we'll be talking about it right here on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Of course, we appreciate it. If you're on podcast, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you leave your comments. One of the best ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. And of course, let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day. For Locked on LSU, your team every day.